Good morning. This is Father Stephen Kelly from St. John's Church in Detroit. We're continuing our series of daily morning meditations where we generally look at one or another lessons that are assigned for morning or evening prayer, what is known as the daily office lectionary. And so let's jump right in on this Friday morning and take a look at the lesson that's assigned from St. Luke's Gospel, the 20th chapter, and it actually kind of rolls over into the 21st chapter as well. And I thought what I would do is jump in at verse number 45. Then in the audience of all people he said unto his disciples, Beware of the scribes, which desire to walk in long robes and love greetings in the markets and the highest seats in the synagogues and the chief rooms at feasts, which devours widows' houses and for a show make long prayers. The same shall receive greater damnation. And he looked up, and he saw rich men casting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw also a certain poor widow casting in thither 2 mites. And he said, Of a truth I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast in more than they all. For all these have of their abundance cast into the offerings of God, but she of her penury hath cast in all the living that she had. Okay, so we're dealing with 2 issues here. First of all, and actually they're related, and that is the primary issue, of course, is pride. That there is, in fact, an issue of the leadership of the people of the original covenant, the scribes, those people who have positions of importance in the Jewish religion and the cultural tradition, that they expect themselves to be held up in high reverence. Now, there used to be a time when this was true for clergy as well, and I suppose there's still clergy who feel that way. I remember talking to a priest named Father Vernon Austin, God rest his soul. Father Austin was the rector of St. John's in Norristown, Pennsylvania, when I was a young curate in nearby Church of the Good Shepherd in Rosemont, Pennsylvania. And Father Austin had also been a curate at St. George's in Schenectady, where I served as an intern, one of the great parishes. And Father Austin, back in the 90s, was kind of bemoaning the changes that had happened in our culture, which included the fact that he said, when I was a young curate and a new rector before recent days, and of course we're talking 30 years, almost 30 years now, he said, but 30 years since he was telling me this story, but he said, back in the 60s and 70s when I was first a priest, he said, I couldn't pay for a bus fare. If I tried to ride a bus, the bus driver just put his hand over and said, Father, go on in. He said, I couldn't buy a cup of coffee. I'd go into a diner in between appointments and try to buy myself some lunch. And goodness gracious, if the owner didn't buy it for me, somebody in a stand would. He said, it's not that I expected it. It's just always happened. And he said, now I'm much more likely to get sneers than I am to have somebody buy me lunch. And I have to say that on one hand, wearing a clergy collar does perhaps buy you entrance or opportunity that perhaps not having a collar would do. But the issue is the humility of saying that I wear this not because I'm important or somehow better than anybody else, but that I'm a servant, that I'm here to serve others, that I have to be open and available to others. When I worked as a chaplain in the hospital setting with a bunch of other clergy in training from other various Protestant denominations, I was required to wear a collar by my bishop with a seminarian stripe on it. And the other one said, oh, you're just hiding behind your collar. So what the head of the CPE unit did was expected all of them to at least one night shift wear a collar. And what did they all discover on that one night that they wore a clergy collar on their night shift? What they couldn't do was hide, right? Because they had a clergy collar on, they had to be there and available. When they couldn't walk down the hallways anonymously, that people were calling them into rooms and calling them into waiting areas and asking for prayer and for help. And so they realized that the collar wasn't something that they were using to build themselves up, but that it was something that identified them to others as a servant, as one who must come to serve. So Jesus is warning that beware of those who want to do these things in order to be important, rather than being called to a humble service, right? And I have to say, I'm not always good at it, but God is always working on me. But then, of course, we have that story of the widow's mite, the fact that the rich are giving of their abundance, and she's giving of her actual substance. We're all called to contribute to the work of the ministry, the work of the church. God calls for a tithe. These rich people were giving a lot more money, but obviously if they weren't giving their tithes, she was giving of what little she had, and she was supporting the church. And he says, look, he commends her in this particular way. But you can go ahead, chapter 21, and read past verse number 4, because soon after that he talks about the destruction of the temple, that the support of that would eventually go away as well, and there would be a new way in which we support the church in order to support the ministry and the work that is going on. So folks, that's our work, right? It's to be both supportive and to giving, and to understand that what we have is a gift from God, and that we are to give of that back to God, and the biblical image for that is a tithe, the first 10%. But I think it's more important for us to also remember the humility aspect, not just for us clergy, but for all of us, that we are called to humble service one to another, and not to expect ourselves to be important, not expect ourselves to get the most important seats, and to be called up front, but to be willing to participate and be a part of what God may be doing among all of his faithful people. So today is Friday, and I do hope that you will get a chance to say your prayers, morning and evening prayer, of course, if you have a prayer book at home, and then, of course, read the lessons and read your scripture. And I hope you have a fantastic Friday. May God bless you.